Brilliant.
Thank you, Wayne. Kia ora tātou. Welcome everybody to this first full meeting of the Central Otago District Council for this triennium. And we will start the meeting with karakia. Councillor Amy.
Thank you very much. And I thought we would start off relatively easy with whakatauki instead of karakia this morning to ease into it. So today I have chosen Manaaki Tangata, Manaaki Whenua, Haere Whakamua, which is care for the land, care for the people, go forward. That was probably appropriate for today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Call for apologies. We have apologies from councillors Duncan and Patterson. Thank you. I'll move those and Tamer will second those. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And we have public forum, which isn't really public forum, but we'll take this moment because at the end of our last meeting of the last triennium, somehow Councillor Calvert, then Councillor Calvert, managed to escape without receiving a gift from us all for your 9 years of wonderful service to the council. So apologies for that. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. And you're enjoying not being here.
Yes. You've got some big decisions to make. We've made some pretty bold ones in the past, and I think the district's in a better shape than it was 9 years ago. So well done and good luck.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice. Now brings us to confirmation of the minutes, which is 26th of October. Got any problems with those? No, Tamer will move them. Sally will second them. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Leads us through to the declarations of interest, and of course the start of the new triennium is a really good opportunity to look at those delegations that you'll find on one of the pages. Page 13 of the agenda onwards, and just make sure that those are updated regularly with our governance manager. And just a note to those who may be watching or members of the media, if we do get a little bit lost or have to pause at times today, we've been put on new operating systems at the start of the new triennium, so I will make apologies now for the high likelihood that I'll get completely baffled and confused at some stage. And councillors, if you do find yourself let down by technology, because we're going to blame technology, please do just whistle out and we can just pause and get you back on track. Okay, that takes us now through to page 16, and that is planning and regulatory. So Neil, over to you.
Yep, here goes the first those pregnant pauses all that time anyway. Just struck me. So yeah, item 22.9.2 is proposed plan change 20, which is the heritage section of our district plan, and the auditors will join the table. Reported by Anne, I'll you take us through it, please, and I'll have any comment at the end.
Thank you, Neil. Plan change 20 is developed around the heritage guidelines that have been for some time. As most of you will be aware, we've got 5 precincts in the district, and each one of them has unique characteristics that make them special. So the heritage guidelines that we've developed we've been working on them since 2018, when we undertook site visits and a community consultation, which indicated that people living in these heritage precincts value the characteristics and heritage of them greatly. So we've been working on it since 2018. There's a little bit of a hiatus, and we picked it up again in 2021 with some more site visits and a little bit more one of the guidelines. The focus of the guidelines is on what property owners can do rather than what they can't do. So it's an enabling, we're trying to create an enabling situation in terms of development that occurs within these precincts, and try to make sure that there's diagrams and there's the language is plain so that people can understand what's required of them in terms of thinking about how you develop precincts. So they're designed to enable a sympathetic development that will protect and perhaps even enhance precincts, the distinctive look of each settlement, which they are a little bit. Plan change 20 brings in the heritage guidelines. It's a fairly might be changed in terms of, there is already some provisions in there, that enable a degree of protection in terms of the heritage precinct, which is section 11 of the district plan. What we've done is we've amended the assessment matters that we use for, if somebody applies for a resource consent in the precinct to build something new or make some decisions, to bring in the guidelines. The guidelines will sit outside the plan, which is quite common. Because then you can make some changes to them when they do develop. I think one of the things that, one of the main reasons why we're been working on this since alongside, Plan Change 19. So when we were starting to think about Plan Change 19, the medium density guidelines, and in particular in Clyde, because as a result of the Vincent Spatial Plan, the Clyde Heritage Precinct has some medium density in there. So we started to think about what that might look like. So the medium density guidelines and the heritage guidelines have been developed alongside each other, so they're consistent. So it was just really to provide some guidance as to what that might look like for Clyde in particular. And that's only because we haven't done the other spatial plans yet for some of the other areas that just working our way through that. One thing about this is this heritage is a matter of national importance under the Resource Management Act. Unlike some of our other plan changes, that the rules associated with this in terms of the assessment matters will have immediate legal effect. So normally what would happen with a plan change is your objective and policy framework would be the only thing that we could consider until it's been through the Schedule 1 process, which is the submissions and the hearings and the reviews. So, so if council approves this, we will finalise section 32, which is an evaluation of the proposal, and get it notified, and the rules associated with it, the assessment matters, will have immediate legal effect. Answer any questions?
Thank you, Anne. The difference with this plan change to others is that because it's heritage, it has immediate effect. So the rules that are in this plan change, as it's proposed, actually start to be applied from day one. It's a plan change like Plan Change 19 for the residential stuff, the industrial one, that doesn't happen that way. It's not until they get down half a bit further.
Yeah.
So my question, just to clarify, because of that, is there anything in here that's going to be contentious, do you think, in terms of what's being proposed that is going to?
No. I guess if anything, that provides more clarity for people that want to develop. What we currently are requiring is heritage impact assessments to be undertaken, and for development in the precincts. And so I guess this gives people, rather than us assessing after the design processes happen, this gives people an advance indication of what might be acceptable, what they should be thinking about when they're designing buildings in the precincts. So it's at that design stage, this is obviously the opportunity, rather than after we receive the consent and then we're pushing back on design that we've already paid for. So this is getting ahead of it.
So here's what I've taken from some, but when I was looked at their redevelopment some time ago, if we had this in place then, they had a different process that would have probably.
Yeah, well, it does give people more
some certainty.
Yeah, more certainty about what's appropriate.
And if I can say, the likes of all of us are probably in a position where they have a whole plan for their development, whereas it's probably people who ask and they say, oh, what do we need to do? And the plan as it's currently written says that the building has to not be inconsistent with the heritage values of the precinct or something like
Really
that. What's that mean?
Yeah.
So this actually supports them when they're thinking about their design, and the other side of it is it gives us some comfort that it is in keeping, because in the past we've had some, because of our, as Ed suggested, quite light assessment matters, we've had some buildings that have gone and then we've gone, is that quite right? But you've got nothing to say.
Yeah.
That isn't quite right. Yeah.
And I think that the way that Dr. Hazelton's gone through and assessed the characteristics of each precinct is really helpful in terms of that provision that Louise has already talked about, is that it does provide some guidance as to what are the characteristics of that precinct.
Any other questions, Martin?
I'd just like to congratulate everybody who's involved, because this is a piece of work which has been overdue for a while. I like it, it's not overly prescriptive, because one thing you can't legislate is good taste. But it will, especially in Clyde, with the development which we're going to be seeing in the not too distant future with particulated sewage, it's going to maintain the integrity of what's there and not run the risk of a whole bunch of false history being built, so that contemporary will reflect the historic, which is really good development. So yeah.
Any other questions? Any others? Tony?
I just had a couple of questions. So in relation to the plan change part, so page 21, item number 6, which is at the very bottom of the page, is the extent to which development supports mana whenua values. I just wondered if that was going to be a bit tricky, given that we don't really have a mana whenua presence in town. Our relationship with iwi is sort of at the starting point of developing on that journey, and I just wondered how that would be characterised. I know there's a page on 14 of the guidelines, which is the culturally aware approach, which is totally appropriate, but I just wondered, with having that in there in the plan, whether that was going to open a bit of a can of worms with us not having the capacity to say what the mana whenua values are.
Yeah, good point. This is a little bit of future proofing. We've had discussions with Ōkaha, and we've had ongoing discussions with them for the last 12 months. With Ōkaha staff around this, and spoken to about bringing in so one of the reasons why this sits outside of the plan is that we're hoping to bring in the cultural heritage as well at some point. They're not in the position at the moment to do that, so it is a little bit of future proofing, but we, in terms of our planning function, have a quite long-standing ongoing relationship because of the RMA functions and the way that we do. So we do work quite closely with Ōkaha. So I think, yeah, in a lot of cases that, yeah, I can see this is probably a little bit premature because we've not quite got there. They don't have the resource at the moment to provide that expansion, which is why we kind of left it quite brief at the moment. The priority is really what's happening in Clyde at the moment was to try and get it out, knowing this sits outside, and then bring in the later on.
With Neil talking about how it will come into effect now, and with those capability and capacity issues, is that going to present any challenges or time delays for people?
No, I wouldn't think so, because we do routinely consult, engage with Ōkaha.
And this particular is about used to a rule, and it's when the council's applying its discretion to the rule. So it's a discretionary activity. So council provides the discretion. It just says that when we're exercising that discretion, we have to consider the extent to which development supports the mana whenua values.
But we can't say.
But
We don't-
typically, because we engage, we would go to Ōkaha and we'd ask.
Yeah.
And if they
always
haven't got capacity or don't know, then they'll apply accordingly. That happens with quite a few of the different consent side of things that happen. So just make sure that as part of the formal process, when the staff are doing the report on an application, that is actually ticked box.
Brings them in.
Brings them in.
Okay.
And if they can't participate, then that is what it is.
Yeah.
And I guess that it was kind of, do we leave it in now, or do we take it out, knowing that the piece of work that Kitty's going to be doing for us through Ōkaha they've got capacity to do it at the moment. So it will be the next stage of this. When Hazelton's also made some recommendations about character contributing buildings and a few other things that we haven't included in this at this point, because we do need to go through a schedule like this. Including those buildings, talking to them. So there'll be multiple stages. So it is a good point that you raise. But, very good point, but it was a kind of, do we leave it on? I mean, happy to, yeah, if we take it out. Sure, but we do definitely engage with Ōkaha on a regular basis.
The other thing I just wanted to check was on the threats and opportunities pages in the heritage guidelines for each of the towns. It mentions specific properties with words like demolition by neglect, and I just wondered if we should have those in there or if we should not. Sorry.
Where was that? I didn't pick up that.
So on the threats and opportunities, so Naseby, it talks about the hotel, Clyde, about specific buildings on Marto Street and Holloway Street. And then I think there was one on Swindon Street as well, and things like the potential for inappropriate infill. And I just wondered, we've got the guidelines, we can mention streets, but probably not individual properties.
Yeah, no, and I thought we'd taken most of the specific ones out, but maybe we haven't. We did try to avoid that, which is why we were really careful with sort of photographs of using we'd had the diagrams done, and you'll note that they're the same as the medium density ones. We got BOPA to do that so that we weren't showing pictures of people's houses that we consider were appropriate or inappropriate. I will take that out. Yeah.
Are there any consents in at the moment that will become contentious if this does get to the media though?
No, I don't think we've got any at the moment. Well, they're all- yeah.
My only point is that number 6 again, to the extent which developments, you know, it is premature for the sake of clarity. Is it better take it out?
I'm not saying no, because remember the process we're working through here. This is about how the council assesses, applies its discretion to an application. It says in exercising the discretion, it'll actually consider those values. That's entirely, that's entirely appropriate, I think, no matter what.
Yeah.
To do that, it's a simple matter of them referring to Manapila and saying, is there anything here? And there may or may not be, but they'll tell us, so we don't have to make that assumption. If you don't put in there, then there's no thought given to it whatsoever, it doesn't happen.
And as we go through that, we might get some feedback that says, in general, we think this, and
Yeah.
this is where we are. And you know, that kind of narrows it down a bit as to where we need to review.
That's the key thing. That's what's proposed here, is that those guidelines will sit outside of the plan. So the process by which they are reviewed isn't as convoluted as the district plan process.
Yeah,
That's,
so,
that's even better.
yeah, it becomes a council.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it does provide that guidance.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Got a couple of questions. In the introduction on page 28, it talks about there's been a review of previous community engagement, site visits and feedback from local heritage and community groups. Given we're now going into a plan change scenario, two questions. One is, how long ago was the engagement with the community? And two is, are you satisfied that there's been recent enough engagement to go to this next stage without?
This will go out with the plan change, so it'll be part of the consultation, so a bit like the medium density. The Central Otago Heritage Trust, Glenn has spoken to them twice about that, and we've had used a lot of feedback through Naseby Vision around that, but the wider community, no, hasn't been involved.
That would be, I think, from the outside looking in, a different thing to submit on a plan change thing on the consultation. So are we running any risk there that we haven't talked to a community as such?
I've got the opportunity through the consultation process to point.
Still no. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. This is no different than if you did it separately. It says actually we do it as part of the bigger picture. And if the community are concerned, then we can reasonably expect that they'll tell us.
Yeah, got that opportunity still through.
Yeah, the sector groups have been spoken to for their specific feedback and knowledge. And
I'm
now,
happy with the sector groups.
yeah, and now this will
Absolutely.
go out to the wider public for comment.
But you can have some sector groups who are 4 people representing 400, you know, unelected.
The community plan groups, we have a sense of where they, so
Yeah.
community plan groups often feedback on heritage lists, so we know where heritage is important to the community, so we can go through that process.
And as an aside, we've had quite a bit of feedback through the plan change now submission process around protecting heritage and Clyde. So we are getting it, and we got it also through the Vincent and social changes. It's coming back at us through a variety of ways. But yeah, I do take it.
Yeah, to the extent where the actual feedback you may get on plan change 20 may be limited because people would have thought they've already submitted through plan change 19's process.
Do something else?
Yeah, and look, it's for my own understanding. I apologise, I should have sent you an email earlier, but how these guidelines interact with the district plan, it says they sit outside the district plan.
Yeah.
They don't have a statutory role. Just for my education, why do we need a plan change if they sit outside the district plan?
because we're amending the assessment matters, in the plan, so we need to, we've aligned the language, I guess is what we've done, we're aligning the language and providing that guidance. So that's what we've done, is we've aligned the language and provided the guidance through the specific guidance through the assessment matters, that somebody could pick that up and understand what that means. So it's just aligning the
So
assessment.
they're
matters.
referenced in the plan, but they sit outside.
Yeah.
so it should be amended.
So rather than, for example, talk about, like we talk about at the moment, about the character of a heritage precinct. We don't say what that is. We don't say what that is for Clyde or Cromwell. Like we don't say what that is, whereas this guideline says what that character is. It explains what the character of each of the precincts is.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. So the changes that we've got, page 21, are the actual changes that will take place in the district plan.
So 21 of the agendas.
Yeah, so on page 21, 22, so that's.
Yeah, there's
it up.
just the
Yeah.
assessment matters. We've kept it
Yeah.
really light. We
Yeah.
haven't touched.
So nothing else in the district plan is actually changing,
No,
and because I haven't gone back and checked that district
just
plan
assessment
section.
matters and
Yeah.
information to be
Yeah.
provided.
And in the heritage section of the district plan, the guidelines are referred to
Yes.
already. This is effectively,
The information to be, it's part of this, that brings it in through. See, point 3.
that's the bit I was trying to find. Point 3,
Bottom of page 22.
page
Yeah.
22.
Point 6. So,
Yeah, relevant, yeah, sorry, I was looking for the words, the heritage development guidelines, but it says relevant guidelines,
Yeah.
that's fine, yep.
so I think that at the moment, as I explained before, if somebody designs a building, we don't have any guidance for them, and then they come in and then we ask them for a heritage impact assessment. Whereas this says that it's kind of flips it around. It says if you are generally in accordance or less with what's in the guideline, or if it's consistent with the guideline, that the only time that heritage impact assessments, which can be quite costly for applicants, will be required is if you sign your off.
Right, recommendation then, is there anything else? Receive the report, direct the plan change 20 be notified, and court without supported in, and approves the release of the draft heritage guidelines for public consultation, so that's a double barrel thing, make sure what's happening, both happening at the same time. We need to reflect the
As amended.
as amended. So that'll be in B, district plan change 20 as amended. And when you've got what that's about, thank you.
Happy to move.
So, any further conversation, discussion, everybody understands what we're doing, all in favour? Against, carried, thank you. Sarah.
Thank you, Neil. We now move on to community vision and experience, and that's yours, Tana.
Very much. So we are to
This is done. The cameras.
And we've just got a wee technological problem, so we'll just pause while R2D2 reboots.
Yeah, cool, Wayne.
Oh.
Big anything else.
These one.
Oh, yes, that was.
Yes,
what's that?
Oh, it's this, the sign in and out system.
But you know, the tabs.
Didn't want to.
Last year, I haven't, I've been fit.
We've never heard of.
Turns out RCDT is here.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry for that.
No, don't be sorry at all.
It's not.
Your fault. Right, Tony.
Right, thank you. So we move to item 22.9.3 on page 85 of your agendas, Roxburgh Golf Club lease rent review with Christina. Thank you, and Gareth.
Okay. Today, as I said, I'm presenting a report on a rent review for the Roxburgh Golf Club. As you would have read, it's gone on quite a journey. Yeah. And it's a journey as we implement the community leasing and licensing policy for this club. As a reminder, the community licensing and leasing and licensing policy came about so that we get a clear and transparent way of applying rent to our community leases. And we are applying that as the rent reviews become due, or we have a new lease comes to an end. So we're starting to have those conversations with the community. And as I've said to all community boards and council, there's some people who are very happy to hear from me because they'll be paying less rent, and there's some people who are not so happy to hear from me because this will affect the rate to more rent. This is a scenario where they were paying nil rental, and now they are going in their rent as we apply the policy. I just wanted to open forum called Richard McNeish. He presented to the board on all the work that the volunteers do on the golf club to keep it maintained. It's quite an eye-catching piece of land as you get in out of Roxburgh, and also the benefits to the club that the club brings to the community as well, and express their wish of why they wanted to remain in a rent. As I said, it was quite a journey, and where the community board landed on after holding it on the table while a review of the community licensing policy was undertaken, was that they would like to exercise the right of exceptional circumstances, which is a clause in the new policy, to set the rent at $772 per annum, and that was the amount that would have been when they started this conversation and process. And also they have expressed a wish that the club comes back and applies for a grant through the community grants process. Also, as an aside, they're going to increase the leasing area to include the car park as well. So the item that we're needing to come back to council on, and the reason why I'm bringing this back to council, is around the exceptional circumstances, as that needs to be ratified by council. Hopefully that's clear. As I said, it was quite a journey for us to get here, so welcome any questions you may have.
Just wanted to clarify the number, because there are a couple of different numbers in there. So there was the 772 per annum, and then there was a 994 figure, and then further down in the report there was a 1716 amount as well, and I just wondered which.
Okay, so I think the 716 amount was, so in their lease they had a clause about how rent was going to be calculated, and that was taking how that was going to be calculated into consideration. I think that's the bit that you're referring to. Then there was the next scenario, which was applying the calculation as per the first round of the community leasing and licensing policy. So it was actually better for them to take the community licensing and licensing policy than what was in their lease. So I was promoting that. And then once the review happened, what happened then was that there was it was a bit more ambiguous as to what was deemed to be income. And I believe the council discussed that and came to a conclusion. And what happened for this case was that entry fees, tournament entry fees, would also be included in income, which actually in turn made it increase again.
So that 994 was the revised policy, and the 772, the original copy of the new policy.
Correct. So applying the revised policy results in 994 per annum. Applying the original policy was 772 per annum.
Any questions?
But if it wasn't for the volunteers doing the work they do, would some of that cost fall to council?
That's quite an interesting question, when you look at that, because would a council still operate a golf course on a piece of land? Would, you know, would it be like that, or would it actually become sort of a reserve, say like Boot Hill, that you go and you have walking areas and some part of it is maintained, maybe a bit more like Primary Park, etc. But some may become just walking tracks. I mean, a golf course does take a lot to maintain.
Just wondering if some of the volunteer hours could be steep.
Well, and then you look at then it opens up then the whole conversation around the community licensing and licensing policy, because this club is not the only club that does a lot of work that benefits the community as well. So it's quite a cyclical conversation.
We've had a conversation on the board tables and around this table about where these community groups fit in and what they do. And it's a question about, would we ever run a golf course? Would we ever run a race course? They are really valid questions, and the answer may be yes and maybe no. And until you actually have to think about it, you don't know. The simple reality here is that you've got to look at the communities and what this organisation and what Offers is doing for the wider community. I think that the conversations that I've been part of in the past have generally said, no one's making money out of this. The service has been provided that's actually enriching and enabling our community to do stuff. And yes, people want to go golf and go, it's an elite sport, blah, 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 so things, well, yes, no, maybe, doesn't need to be. There's plenty of scope for young people. It's all based on volunteers doing stuff. And for as long as we've got them, we'll be going backwards. So if you make it cost more, just simply means it's going to make cost more for those that are going to contribute, participate. That means then the volunteers don't keep going. Chances are council ends up with the land, guess what, cost more. So, you know, to me, these things are no-brainers, and the whole concept of charging them arm and leg doesn't make sense. The chance to use that policy to bring the exceptional circumstances is that's the right way to consider it. I like that. I'll always probably disagree that entry fee should be part of how you set rents, but you can see what it does, and then we can actually have that policy work.
And I think where we came from as well, that golf club, they did their own rabbit-proof fencing at the golf club, and they paid for that themselves. And the neighbour is actually council, it's council land, so they're basically trying to keep rabbits out that are on council land. You know, and they've done an amazing job of the golf course, and it's they've got the broom down as well. So when you arrive in Roxburgh, it's so well maintained. It's a really tricky golf course to maintain. You don't just take a mower out there and go and, you know, get a tractor and mow around. It's a really up and down golf course, so it takes a lot of work to keep it looking pristine. And
So how do you feel about the wind?
so we went round and round and round in circles on this. Like, we spent a lot of time talking about it, and I suppose we didn't actually realise that they were on a no rent scheme before we approved the new rental system. So then obviously, you know, when the new rents came to be, it appeared that there was a bit of a gap. So we went round and round in circles, and the only way that we could really come up with a solution was that we charge them the rent, and that they then come to the community board and ask for a grant to pay for the rent. And Stephen advocated that. He advocated that we did charge them the rent. But I definitely believe that it's fair enough that we took the 772, because we left it on the table, and then by leaving it on the table, it actually ended up costing them more. So I believe that it is fair to charge them the 772.
Just there's a little typo on page 87 under recommendation for the last sentence of 2. However, the board resolved to set the rent at an amount that was less than what is provided under the revised police.
Policy.
Yeah, just.
Any other-
Thanks, Tana. Look, I've got sympathy for the golf club. I've played it. It's a massive course. It's a difficult course in terms of maintaining it. On the flip side, before we brought this policy in, it was a bugger's muddle what people were being charged. And that's across rugby clubs, golf clubs, you name it. And it seemed to be basically, could have been 30 years ago who had people around this table and who didn't, it was an absolute bloody shambles. And this policy has brought it into line. We've got consistent charging. I'm troubled with deviation from the policy, because where does that end? At what point do we say, well, actually, no, that club has got X and this has got Y. And one of the things I would have liked to have seen here is how much money this club's got in the bank. Because I know of a golf club that I used to be a member, they had 200,000 in the bank, and we talked about $222. So that's not the ratio. So I think we just need to be careful from deviating from our policy. But of course, option C, and I agree with Neil and recommendation B, that we don't use the old policy, and option C allows us to deviate from it. The one question I have that I've eventually got myself to, have we had any other exceptional circumstances? I can't recall any that have deviated from the policy.
So at this point, the policy, the revised policy hasn't actually been in for very long.
No, so this is,
So watch this.
yeah.
It's
I
going
just
to,
think you do
Yeah.
need to consider the grants going forward as the pressure may potentially come on grants.
So I just want to sort of remember why we have policies.
Mm.
But option C, recommendation C does use the policy
and I mean,
to go back to a bugger's muddle based on it's not fair.
Thank you, Sanjay.
I just wanted to make sure that we're all clear that the grants are a contestable process.
Mm.
They're not a funding line for any organisation. They shouldn't be predetermined. We should be waiting for grants to come in and
Exactly.
who we apply them. And if somebody gets one this year, does not necessarily mean they're the best candidates for it.
Any other comments at this stage? So recommendations that we receive the report and accept the level of significance. B, decline the Teviot Valley Community Board's recommendation to set the rent payable under the lease held by the Roxburgh Golf Club in accordance with the earlier version of the council's community leasing and licensing policy. And C, agrees to exercise the exceptional circumstances clause of the council's community leasing and licensing policy 2021 and set the rent payable under the lease held by the Roxburgh Golf Club for the next 5 years, commencing 1st of July 2021 at $772 per annum plus GST. You'd like to move that, Neil?
Okay.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Martin. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to page 107. Item 22.9.4, Bannockburn Domain Reserve Management Plan. Nikki and Gordy, good morning.
So Bannockburn Domain Reserve Management Plan, this is now at its final stage, and you'll see there's some track changes in the document that was at the request of the Cromwell Community Board, just to make sure it was clear what has been changed from the draft to the final. I think that this has gone through quite a rigorous process, and I'm comfortable with where it's at now. It's had plenty of opportunities for the community to provide input, including some ways that we wouldn't normally do with reserve management plans, like holding of a drop-in session. And yeah, so it's the first plan that's been done in 22 years. It's definitely time for a refresh. And we've definitely have some things to think about as we move forward. You'll see in the plan, the community is quite keen for the green open space in the center of the domain to remain open space. So we just need to work through some of that. It seems that maybe what I didn't understand when we've done this is that there might actually be tents that use that space over the summer. So we just need to work with the committee how it works for them and how we can better make it work for them.
Thank you. And seems to provide quite a bit of clarity, which is always helpful. Any questions or comments?
Been a long time coming. But that's not a criticism, because it's amazing what you can do with that one, but it does provide some certainty, some direction for the committee that runs it as well. The board's been going through this, and I think that we've got a good outcome. And Nikki's right, the idea of the drop-in sessions was probably a master stroke in
Yes.
enabling community engagement. I think it might be something for the future that we can probably benefit by, so people get a chance to say what they want to say, listen and be heard. So there's another discussion. Move recommendations A and B in due course.
Any other comments, discussion? Thank you, Neil. Someone to second? I'll second that. Thank you, Sally. So A, receives the report and accepts the level of significance. B, recommends that the Bannockburn Domain Reserve Management Plan 2022 is adopted. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Tona. This brings us to the council part of the meeting, and we start on page 155 with item 2295, the Central Otago District Council Tree Policy Renewal Policy. Yeah, same thing.
Hi. So, the first tree policy was done in 2020, and I'm not sure why it had an expiry date.
1 or 2 years.
Yeah, it was quite a short expiry date. So we had a look and thought, well, there's not really anything in there that needs changing. We've been getting our heads around it and implementing it now. So all I've really done is renew it and added in a couple of reference documents such as the wild and conifer policy, which has been created in the meantime.
Reasonable. Questions, councillors?
Does it have a review date?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be 2025.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. So once.
I'll go on that front page somewhere. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Next review, yeah.
Finley.
I was just wondering, this policy need to go hand in hand with updated reserve management plans, standing reserve management plan.
Yeah.
Do we need to have our reserve management plans up to date?
Yeah, this is slightly different processes, but the reserve management plan reference council tree policy as it does with council. Okay, and under the reserves that council does is able to cut down trees. Thinks it needs to for safety reasons or so that doesn't. This is just how we manage trees on our land, and it does sort of dovetail with reserve management plans, but it's outside of
I'm thinking of course of the half mile reserve, and I'm wondering, is there going to be a reserve management?
not in the immediate future, is it?
Which is why I'm thinking it should go hand in hand.
So, yeah, so we need direction from a community. And we need to be able to fit that in there with the program as well.
Louise, come to you recently.
Through the chair, if I can comment, there's a wider piece of work that we're working on, which is over all of the parks and reserves in the district. And there's quite a few reserves that don't have management plans, so the tree policy will apply to them. And there's quite a few reserves with very old management plans. So it's a very big piece of work over the years, and we wouldn't want to not have a tree policy because we're waiting for many years to get reserve management plans in place. So we're just sort of ordering our way through that by starting at a high level and understanding all of the pieces of land we've got and some that we didn't even know we've got. So it's a really big piece of work.
And just on that, the tree, we don't only have trees on reserves, we have roadsides and other bits of land that are not reserved, so this takes care of that as well.
The tree policy informs whether you've got a reserve management plan or not. So you kind of got to have it anyway.
It's regardless, yeah.
Neil,
No, between you and Louise, you said what I was going to say, so I'm done. Yeah.
does that cover it, Lynn?
Yes.
Any further questions, councillors? Then we take ourselves back to page 155, receives the report and accepts the level of significance and adopts the Central Otago District Council Tree Policy 2022. Somebody like to move that? Taylor, seconded Nigel. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And just to note that that will be Nikki's last report to council as she's leaving us.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right?
I was gonna say, yeah, Friday is my last day. So thank you very much for the past triennium, and I wish you all the best for this one. And yeah, it's been really a great experience, and I really enjoyed my time. Time for a new challenge.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks,
I
Nick.
know.
I'm worried about Sarah and Sally, because that feeling has changed and you're leaving.
Maybe it's because you're still here.
I deserve that.
I'll still be floating around.
Thank you. Okay, page 193, 2296. The future for local government draft report. Madam CEO, the floor is yours. You can stay exactly where you are.
In front of you is the
recently released draft report from the Future of Local Government, Future for Local Government Review Panel. It is a report that I wanted to table for you just so that we're publicly stating we've got it, we're considering it, and there's no decisions to make today on it. The report that's in front of you is not a draft of the final report that we will expect to see from that panel. It is by their own definition a provocation. It makes some recommendations and asks more questions. They're still in inquiry mode. It is quite complex in that it is hard to pull out one recommendation without considering all of the recommendations because it is proposing a very integrated future for local governance. In a nutshell, I think the report well defines the problem definition for our sector and delivering outcomes for our communities. It makes some very principled solutions. The recommendations and questions within the report sort of range from obvious and practical to more bold and requiring a rethink of the whole system. So there's quite a bit of work for us to do in understanding how we might submit on this report. Submissions close on the 28th of February, which feels sort of far away right now, but of course there's the whole thing called Christmas in between. So the timeline is actually really short for us to really engage with this. But staff are working on a process at the moment by which we get advice to council for the development of a submission for you to consider. And that's about it. Any questions?
It's a hefty beast. And I don't know about everyone else, but I've managed to read the executive summary and that's it. Got much further with it, Tony?
To the end. Sometimes a lot of breaks.
Yeah.
Was slow going. Like CEO says, a lot of questions and all interlinked and integrated, which means you can't really put in questions. Yeah, challenge.
Any other comments, councillors?
I think it's got some significant implications for everybody. And the key thing about this to me is that we, as an elected group, can come to some views, given the fact that we're an elected group. It's going to be really difficult for us to represent what the views of the wider community are. There's just no way that we can do that and say this is the view of Central Otago District. So whatever we do and how we work it is that we're going to make sure that we encourage everybody else to actually somehow wade through the executive summary at least and see if there's stuff in there that they're going to like or not like, because this is actually going to affect the community's future. It's not about the future of this council, community. And some of the proposals and the provocative questions they've got in there and observations have some big implications. So despite what we might think as a group of people, the wider community is going to make sure they actually engage. And it scares the living bejesus out of me because I can't see that they're going to do it. I couldn't even vote for goodness sake. So that scares me. And I just hope that the authors of the report realise that actually it is significant and that some lessons are learned from some other processes that are going on around us at the moment to not replicate those mistakes. Don't get me wrong, I've read the summary, looked at some other stuff, but then that's enough for me at this stage. You know, try and understand what it means is going to be difficult. So whatever we do here today, I think that recommendation we'll receive a report, but I'd like to think that we'll actually detail that recommendation, what we're going to do between now and then to get to making a submission by that ridiculously close end date of the 28th of February, which is really unhelpful. We forget about a month here lose for Christmas and everything else. So that's sort of my starting position, but obviously other views.
Perhaps given we're not yet entirely sure the direction we go, do we just put the next step in, which is this will come back on December 14th with a further update.
I just wondering if we flesh that out with what's going to actually happen between now and then. Because otherwise, do we know what we're doing? Are we able to say, well, we're going to, chief executive is going to organise X, Y, Z, ABC without being too prescriptive, but just to sort of give some feel. What I'm worried about is that, and I'll go back to the 3 waters as my biggest concern. How we handle that was entirely appropriate. How we maybe communicated that to our community didn't actually get that well covered. Doesn't matter how, why, or who, whatever, but we need to do better. This is potentially even a significant going forward, so we need to actually clearly make sure our community are informed, because most people out there, if you ask them about this, they go, huh? Nothing about it.
And I guess it's partly on us as well to be having those conversations within the sectors and groups that we're a part of, and being able to share with people how they can also have their say and through some of the stuff.
I must mention it at Fire Brigade next week.
I'm sure they'll be thrilled to hear all about it. Maybe you could do a PowerPoint presentation as well.
And I've had a response.
Right, so you're wanting a recommendation beyond what the report be received, Neil, just to next steps, or we know it's going to be back on December 14th, and is that the appropriate time when we've got greater clarity to go, right, here's where we're at?
Yeah, I think if we want to somehow, and even to the extent of telling our community what we've done with today, or what's going to happen between now and the 14th, in some way, shape or form, to hopefully pique some interest at least. But not prescriptive, I don't, it's too.
Yeah. I think your point that it's going to be, if the community is waiting for us to come out with a consultation document to give us our feedback, and then that can get churned through to,
Not going to happen.
it's not going to happen. I think that message needs to be made very clear today, that it's just not going to be possible for that to happen. So people who wish to be involved outside of the immediate organisation need to take it upon themselves to A, read the report, be engaged with whatever is available to the public, and have a talk to their elected members on a one-to-one basis. And of course, media's in the room, potentially in the ether as well. So perhaps that's a message, and a message that I can through in communications I have on. It doesn't necessarily need to be the signals there, that we don't see conceivably how we can do it any other way. But outside of that, the mechanics of what we do remain still a bit.
Yeah, I guess I'd add that even if we had a longer runway on this document, it's not our piece of work.
Yeah.
And it's also not the final draft. So the city consulting on question, it's a little bit of to invoke the legislation to consult. So there's a multitude of solutions where I think, how do we engage with this in the best way? You know, we do that with submissions all the time, and this is not a reform, this is a review. It may, what it says is that if it is accepted that these are good ideas, for them to happen, there would need to be, but it's not there yet. So that's why it's important we do feedback on it and what our views are. If you are going to speak with the Fire Brigade, or being any other such group, I do strongly recommend you read the whole report. The executive summary, I didn't realise this until I got through all 274 pages, is not enough. There is a lot more in the beyond the executive summary, so I'd really encourage you to engage with that if you're going to have those conversations. But perhaps in terms of a recommendation, find somewhere in between. And the reason I say that is because in the last week, as we've digested this, I've gone down rabbit holes and popped back up and gone down another one, and trying to think about how we manage it. But we absolutely will try to convene and have a good process that we could outline to on the 14th of December at your meeting that you could agree to. So I guess what we're saying to the community is that we'll come back here on the 14th of December with some recommendations on process.
Yeah, I think that's important. That's probably all I was looking for. Just so it shows what's happening, and then in the meantime, through our own roles and in particular opportunities will come about, just to come up with think pieces, try and encourage, provoke people, whatever. The reason for mentioning the Fire Brigade is I just see that that's a litmus test of the people that are in the community. So we're going to be pushing it uphill with the point of state, all due respect to the members of the Common Volunteer Fire Brigade.
It is a pity really that the report is in this form, because it's just so complex and lengthy. And we as members of council who are committed to the local government process, and we're struggling with it. So the idea that if we struggle with it, that it goes out for public consultation, that we use Neil's analogy of Fire Brigade or any group,
It's just not going to happen. So when we get down the process of distilling what's in there, we're going to have to simplify it for ourselves, let alone for the general public. For me, that's a real criticism of the report as it's presented. All very well to say it's provocation to promote further ideas, but if it's presented in such a form that you can't access it, especially given the timelines we've been given, it becomes a bit of railroading, not the right way, but you just want to give it the consideration it deserves, because you haven't got the time delivered, and it's been outlined in such a complex way, and it's a fundamentally constitutional changing document for our country. So, to me, it's really disappointing to see the report presented like that, and being asked to comment with it. And
Okay, so I'm wondering, just in terms of the way forward, as he struggles his way around this, how about we have an A as it is and a B? Right, emails to Wayne. The report will come back to 14 December meeting with a plan for the way forward prior to council submission. That was it, Nick?
I was just writing a different way.
Bear with me while I see if I can. Make sure we know what that is. I don't think we need that up on the board, even it's pretty clear in what it says. I think the other thing to note too, and it's easy to do with a 280 something page document, is we need to be awake to what isn't in there as well. Because I think it's been like, overview of the summary, I was like, well, that's interesting that hasn't, been mentioned. All right, well, on that basis of what I said for take in Neil's concerns, that we have some record of the process. I'll move A and B, and just to repeat at any moment now, I'll have it in front of me. Right. Yes, well, the report will come back to 14 December meeting with a plan for the way forward prior to council submission. So I'll move that. Someone second it. Thank you, Tony. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Thank you. Page 455, 29.97, the register of delegations, and that is now Saskia. Order and welcome, Saskia.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Just a couple of comments before I open for questions. You'll see in the attachment I have changed the changes to the CEO part of the delegation register, which is the focus of today. So why we had to make some changes was to align with the new ELT structure. So that's primarily been all the changes that you can see in the second half. And I've also added in, and I hope it satisfies the comment from last time, a more express link to this register, and then the staff manual that is signed off by the CEO. So that's at the very end of the attachment there. So what we've done as part of this process, we've also done a thorough review of the staff financial delegations, and they have been reviewed by the CEO. So the primary changes there again were to update the staff manual to the new titles. And also we had some title changes over the years. There were some historic titles in there that we updated. And in my area, for example, there were some staff that didn't actually need financial delegations, so we removed those from the staff manual. The other thing, just to note there, at the last Maniapoto Community Board meeting, Councillor Duncan was appointed to the Ice Rink Committee, and following a discussion with his worship, it was agreed that it made sense for Councillor Duncan to serve as the councillor representative on that committee. So we've also brought that as part of this paper for approval and consideration of councillors. Open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Just in relation to that, and it's probably just clarification of the actual wording, the council representative is on the Maniapoto Curling International, and the Maniapoto Community Board is the ice rink. I think it's the same thing, just using different language. I might just tidy that up. And indeed, there's an amalgamation coming up that may, well, not the same thing, because the ice rink is actually a separate entity. So we just clarify that, but regardless, Stu will take my place on Maniapoto Curling International. Okay, councillors, questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Neil?
Page 467, section 46, it refers to the powers and functions reserved to the council. And one of the ones that's in there is delegations to officers in the second to last bullet point. But if I'm correct, I think the staff delegation manual, which is referred to, I think only one place in this document, and that's under the RMA side of things, is the delegations to officers. And I don't know that that document has been approved by council, because I think that's been approved by the chief executive. We decided last year, then was it the year before, to take out the staff delegations out of this manual, put into a staff one. But there's a bit of a legacy here, because the council says will reserve the following powers and functions to itself, which includes the delegations to officers. So I'm wondering, I know that the staff delegations manual came to the Audit and Risk to be received. Don't believe it was ever approved by council. And I guess the way it reads at the moment, it probably should be. Not going to be, then we need to agree to change that. And then, so but bear with me while I finish the links, because there's a bit more to it. 467, number 46. Because then if you go to just a minor section 60, which I'll turn the page when I get there, and this fancy unit does, there it is. I would suggest that page 491 at section 60, it probably should have a subheading in there about either RMA or something like that, because it's sort of, it follows on from under the subheading of contracts, tenders, purchasing and sale of assets.
Sorry, page 491.
491, yeah. At 60,
thank you.
it goes on to talk about RMA, but it's under the heading of contracts, tenders, purchasing and sale of assets and services. Then RMA comes up again a bit later on. I just think there's just a bit of housekeeping around how that fits. Section 81 is RMA, so probably should sit together. And it says in 81 in particular, it says the council has approved the RMA Act delegations as outlined in the statutory and other delegations to officers section of the staff delegations manual. Can't have, because we haven't approved the staff delegations manual. So what I'm going to propose is that this should go as it is. Don't try and change it now, but with those comments to say, actually that can be fixed up and brought back. And I'm not sure what it needs to look like or the outcome, whether we need to approve the staff delegations or whatever, but we need to have something to formally get it right.
I think it's changing the words, referring to the manual rather than, so the whole point of the decoupling. Was that you have that flexibility to work with delegations as things change. So we've obviously got the words wrong.
Doing that, I think it's important to just give us the status of the delegations menu and what we approved to get that out of here, just to make sure we're not, what we already approved in terms of making that separation is what's now reflected. So I can't remember what it said. When we approved.
So you want to go back to what was?
Yeah, just make sure, just make sure we got it right. Yeah. I'm not saying you've tried to do anything but it's just one of the problems. Well, no, it's just words that you make a consequential change. You didn't get one back heard and someone comes along and says, hang on, you might have missed something. And I do think the hearings panel, and I did make this comment last time, has no, I'll go back to whatever page it was on, way back about. So the hearings panel, unlike all the other assessment committees and other committees, doesn't have a constitution. So I just think for consistency, we should have it set out the same way, and the same with the district licensing committee. There should be a common a template, but we've got the other ones. Okay, let's go to page 477. If you go back and look at the assessment committee on page 476, you'll see how that's structured. It says reporting to constitution, blah, blah. The hearings panel doesn't have that, and neither does the DLC. And I just think it should consistency reflect how we constitute those committees.
So the district licensing committee is quite separate to the hearings panel.
Yes, absolutely.
So you wouldn't think that reading that, would you? You'd almost think it was. Think it was part of the hearings panel. So what you're saying is there, it doesn't have it all.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
just
need that. It's a tidying
up. And I do wonder, my last 50 point is that this is all sitting under part 5, which is committees of council. So my question would be is the DLC a committee of council? I don't think it is. It's not made up of councillors. So probably sitting in the wrong place in this manual. And then on the same basis, we go then after that to joint committees on page 481. Now, I don't think that's a committee of council either, so it should probably sit under part 7. Yeah, but that's, yeah, but I think if I had been half organised, I would have actually sent it through earlier, but I wasn't half organised.
Yes, and it may be that, in the way that we use the word council, it's not a committee of council as in this table. Some other council, this council is the governing body or something else, the council means it's constituted effectively from the council.
Yes, yeah, just get the wording, yeah. And to be fair, this stuff has been like this for a long time.
Yeah.
So there's no criticism here of anything, just one of those things that.
Yeah.
Once I thought, now I finally worked out in my own mind what has bugged me for some time.
So in terms of where we go from here, we've got A, B and C, but that's, you've got all of those things to clarify, Saskia? Well, rapidly written, no.
I've got a note here.
Oh, fantastic.
We can proceed with A, B and C, but at some stage, it's not, I appreciate going to be the top of your list, but sometime within the next, few months.
Yeah.
That will come back, tidied up for a restamp. And we'll just keep an eye on that. Is that, I don't think we need to move that. We just, what we're, are you comfortable with that, Neil?
Yeah, I could note a recommendation that there's some other changes that will be, the other changes that were identified will be worked on, just so it sits there as an action. That's right. I'm not bothered.
Well, I think in terms of process, when someone's reading in 2 years' time and they go, what the heck, that is kind of tidy to have that. So there'll be a recommendation D that the delegations register will be brought back within the next 6 months with clarifications suggested at this meeting. Included. How about? I don't think there's substantive changes, they're just making it a bit.
Might stop us doing what we're doing.
Yeah, we're still doing what we're doing. So that'll be a D. So A, B, C, and what I just said at D that Wayne may or may not read back to us.
Notes the delegations register will be brought back within 6 months with clarifications of it.
6 months okay for you, Saskia? I just made that
That's fine.
number up.
That won't take me long. I can bring that well.
3 years is a bit too fast.
Now, I told you to take back what I said earlier about the stuff being,
Salty, I think.
yeah, do I use that word?
All righty. So we've got A, B, C, and D. I'll move that. With somebody second it?
No.
Yeah, we do. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Aye, and against, that's carried with thanks. And we now go to page 496, the development of the long-term plan. Goodness me, here we are, Saskia.
Again. So you'll see that this paper is a very highly detailed, so just a couple of comments around that. Given that the majority of councillors have had the pleasure of going through a long-term plan, it wasn't my intention today to go through it in a massive amount of detail in terms of all the steps. But what I'm proposing for the 2 new councillors is that I set up a separate session and do a bit of an introduction to the long-term plan, especially what we want with councillors and community boards. Also, will, given the number of newly elected community board members, I'm intending to do that early next year as well, so they understand their role in the development of the long-term plan. So what you'll see, some slightly different things this time round, or slightly, I suppose, earlier than last time, is straight off the bat after this meeting, so at your next meeting, we are going to come and have a conversation with you around the development of the outcomes, because that needs to feed through the whole LTP and understanding really what our community wants and what they want to see the district as and the vision for the district. So Paula and her team will lead us through that conversation at the next meeting. I'm going to go up to the Audit and Risk Committee this side of Christmas and just get some real clarity around the role of the Audit and Risk Committee of the long-term plan. Last time, just with the timelines, what happened there is we're doing policy reviews, sort of out of cycle and aligning with meetings and the expectation from the committee as they'll be received within the meeting. So I just want to make sure that we've got that well all this time round and that all works. And then early next year, when we're back from our Christmas break, we are going to have a bit of a scene setting conversation with you all, really around, what you'd like to achieve from the LTP, sort of what you're seeing. We'll start the conversation around the financial strategy at that time as well. The only other thing I'd like to really say is depending on the direction that you give us, there might need to be additional workshops factored in. What you see in front of us is the ones that I know for sure we need to have. But if you decide there needs to be, I know someone from the community comes up with a great idea and you're like, well, we need to know more about that. And then it may well be that we need to schedule you all to understand the budget around it, etc. The final comment, sorry, before I open it for questions, is you'll see at the very last box there, we're aiming for a May 2020 date. So what Saatchi and I were really keen to do was not aim for the 30th of June and work our timeline for the 30th of June, is to give ourselves a wee bit of flex there. And in the event things happen, and the main thing that is likely to happen is audit. So we are even struggling with the audit of our annual report. Fingers crossed they're going to start on Monday, but that's significantly later than it was last year. So this may well change depending close to the time when we know about the audit timeframes, but we won't let that stop us starting now and getting on with that. On that note, I'll open up any questions.
Thank you, Saskia. That's extremely helpful. I really like that May 24 date. And if we're ready to go bar audit then and problems arise, we will point, we'll be able to say, well, we did our bit. Thank you. Questions, councillors?
How does the FY 24 LT annual plan fit into all this?
Yes.
You all happy with that?
Yeah, so that's so the next step in that is a conversation with you all on the 14th of December. So of course it all starts running parallel. If we go out for consultation on the annual plan, our intention is that would be March, and you'll see in this document by mid-February we'll be having conversations with the community around our community outcomes. So there will be an overlap there if we go out for more consultation, but unfortunately I just couldn't work the schedules any other way to make them both work.
So resource wise and all those sort of things, you're quite comfortable that it's a piece of cake?
I wouldn't say it's a piece of cake, but Commons have been heavily involved in the development of both this and the annual plan, and say it's pretty unavoidable if we want to get this all done in a timely manner. Yeah.
The planning that's gone in now and recognising those things is really important, I think, to be commended. So I look forward to your continued enthusiasm, and more importantly, I look forward to when Sally and Sarah do their test on how the LTP process works. You did tell about that, didn't you?
On that basis, could you make sure that the email about that meeting goes to all elected members and not just Sally and Sarah?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. It's open to anybody.
That would be
that
helpful.
would like
Sort of fresh.
Yeah, but we consider. Yeah. And depending on schedules, I'll either have that towards the end of, or probably by mid-December, or otherwise it'll be when we come back from the Christmas break, but it'll be definitely before workshop one, will be that one-on-one for LTP. So I'll take that a wee bit offline and look at schedules.
So, thank you. Any further questions?
I have an observation.
Yes.
Given, I think everyone around the table knows the very considerable dislocation to both the organisation from an operating and governance point of view of the last LTP process, that this time around we take a pragmatic view of the LTP and its utility. I know there are legal requirements we have to meet, but than that, it's nice to think we've got a process that doesn't really derail the organisation in the way the last LTP. Because it just puts, especially on staff, it just puts such immense pressure. And I can look at workshops, see what 7 workshops and promise and attend them, but for the staff, it's just.
We wake up excited on those days.
Keep going yourself that.
But one of the challenges of our legislative requirements around long-term planning is that it does place an enormous amount of stress on the organisation. And we have worked, this will be my 3rd LTP here, we have worked each time to try and reduce that level of stress. The way the system currently designed, I think going to be difficult. But should things like the future for local government review recommendations get taken into place and your terms are extended to 4 years, say, and so a long-term plans, then that would be great. We'd love that.
We could start. Fine.
Certainly the direction I'm looking at leading the long-term plan and some of my own thoughts on the way we enter into consultation will make things a little bit easier than the last one, we had massive projects and yeah.
Yeah, that's the area where we just got to be really realistic.
Very much
So then the legislative requirements will.
budgetary requirements too, I think this time.
And yeah,
We're also going to be dealing with unknowns about where all 3 waters will be by then.
It's the really tricky part of it, isn't it? Yeah.
I think we will be working on the basis that what is currently proposed is what it will be.
Yeah. You don't want the mayor,
And
to
our
issue- you don't want the mayor to issue any instructions, just so ignore it or something like that. Like another mayor's done, just,
We would be breaching legal obligations if we did.
doesn't seem to be an issue. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting to note there was the South Island Council in their last, was it their LTP or their annual plan, I think it was their LTP, chose to ignore 3 waters because they didn't believe it would go ahead. And they got absolutely spanked by the opposite for obvious reasons. At this stage.
And, but yeah, interesting to know what the end result of that spanking was, so.
Yeah. Yeah,
given
that's
the
true.
performance of the audit office, they can't even organise the timing for a spanking.
Right.
Yeah, just before we finish up, just noting around the staff matters, we obviously need to do quite a lot of work in the background with our finance system around the 3 waters. So there will be quite a lot of work, in particular, it's across the organisation, but in particular the finance team, to do that modelling, to take the 3 waters out, the impact on overheads, the impact on debt. So we obviously want to crack on with that as early as we can, start shaping that.
Thanks, Saskia. Anything else, Tim? I'll move A and B. Sally,
I'll
receipt.
second it.
All those in, any further discussion? All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Thank you very much, Saskia.
Yeah.
Now we're on to page 501, elected members remuneration. Wayne, that's yours. You're welcome to stay where you are. Thanks.
Okay, so elected members remuneration. I've just got a couple of things I just want to read. The elected members remuneration is determined by the Remuneration Authority. This doesn't include the mayoral salary and it also doesn't include community board salary in this paper. So the council is given a pool of money and that's determined by the Remuneration Authority. The amount that's given is unable to be disputed. We're basically handled it. This is your lot. And then it also must be allocated in its entirety as well. So the total pool for this year was $362,213, and the minimum allowable remuneration for a councillor $27,182. Now you'll see on page 502 there's a number of positions where we have recommended additional allocations to the base salary. So you see there, so deputy mayor, portfolio lead, a new one allocating some for members of the audit and risk committee, allocating a little bit extra for Councillor Ellie in light of the fact that she's the Vincent Community Board Chair, and also allocating some extras for those folk who are also on community boards.
Thank you. So I'll just add to what Wayne said. He and I worked together on this to try to find a fair way forward within the amount that we've got and the minimum amount, and with the overview that I can have of seeing all parts of this equation. And so I've brought the audit and risk in, not just because I think in the past it is work that should have been rewarded, but also, or recognised, I think it's probably a better word than rewarded, but also I've increased the requirements on audit and risk members bar the chair this year. this term. So the problem with these settings is you can still have a councillor who works 10 times harder than anyone else outside of these delegations, and I don't think any of us are here for the money anyway. But these are the best, and there was a lot of putting the numbers in place, and then later on people went into those places, so the numbers came first, and that's why there's an adjustment for Tamer with taking over the chair role, because taking a chair of a board is significantly more. So fairness is a terribly subjective thing, but that's where I've landed. So any questions or comments, council?
There's a typo, I assume, on the first table there, the position and the number of those positions. It says 5 community board members. I assume that should be 6. And you can under both as community board member and chair, but I'm assuming the numbers still add up. It's just a typo.
I think it'll be 5 because the 6th is the chair. So you've got 3 at Vincent and 3 at Cromwell, but 1's counted as the chair.
But that can't, in the breakdown underneath, it's listed as both member and chair.
It should be 6 because
So it's either
Tamer
6.
gets 0.14 as being a member, and sorry, 0.18 as being a member, and 0.14 being chair as well.
So
It's chair is correct.
Gotcha. Well done.
Doesn't change the
Doesn't
calculations.
so it looks like the numbers add up correctly. It's just that 5 should be 6 in that first table and that. That's probably it.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I can see the audit and risk member coming.
And just in further, so what will happen from now, should these be approved today, is we'll send our calculations on to the Remuneration Authority, who will do the thing, and should they accept these proposals, then that will be gazetted, and then it'll come back to us sometime in the new year, and these new ratios will be allocated, and then everyone will get a bit of a, so it's not really a Christmas bonus, because it'll be after Christmas, but you know, it'll catch up. Yeah, it'll catch up with everybody.
All right, any further questions? On that basis, I'll move A and B. For your second, Sarah, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Aye, against, carried, and I'm going to adjourn us for lunch now early because we've actually got some photographs that need to be taken. We would like to do them before you have lunch. So that your showers are clean. So we'll adjourn for lunch and we will be back at 12:40 sharp. Thank you. Quite warm here, is it just me?
Don't turn it down. I've heard this.
I'm pretty sure it's actually quite cold.
What?
You need to put a